Dr. John Gottman, who's one of the top marital researchers or relationship researchers, talks about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And those are the 4 character traits that happen in any relationship dynamic, but most specifically are tracked in committed relationships, where if there's criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling at a hyper consistent pattern, we all do it in some way, shape, or form, but when they come in lockstep with each other consistently, will be the main reason why couples end up in an attorney's office. So the criticisms are the "you always," "I hate it when you," "why do you always," "you're just like your mother," right? One of those type of things, right? That you're basically finding a critical flaw that's how they were born, and there's nothing they can do to erase it or fix it. Is criticism. Contempt is the eye rolling, the right, or the "go F yourselves," or right, the I hate you, right? The people that so it can be both verbal and nonverbal. The defensiveness is the warding off a perceived attack in one of those 2 things. Me, what about when you? Which we're seeing tons of right now. The political environment is rife with the defensiveness.
Oh, yeah.
It's not right when someone talks about another person on the other side, it's the immediate lobbing the grenade back versus saying, "Do you know what? You might be right about that." Right. But then they just go, "Well, what about when that happened with your guy?" Right. That's just defensiveness in that pattern, right? It's a criticism defense mechanism. But then you have the last one, which is huge, is stonewalling. Stonewalling is you just shut down. I'm not going to respond. You might be talking to me, but I'm just going to, it's as if I'm not even hearing you, or even walking out of the room. So those are the 4 horsemen. Those 4 things determine the success and health of any communication pattern in a relationship.
So what's interesting about that, if we take that couples dynamic versus kind of a workplace coworker dynamic, we probably all experience some version of that at work. But it's not the same kind of relationship. We're not as emotionally invested, and we can walk away from it. We can just say, well, I'm just not going to deal with Susan. Like, I'm not going to deal with Barry. Like, I can just I can create space.
But in those scenarios, there might be a different type of life and death experience, which is that person can get me fired and therefore not be able to take care of my family. Or that person is competition for me advancing or moving forward in this company.
Yeah.
So there is that nuance of it's a different relationship.
Yeah.
Right. But but we still have to acknowledge power differentials in any relationship.
It reminds me, I had a friend of mine years ago, and he came to a class I was teaching, and he was on the panel, and he had been a partner in a big consulting firm, and he was one of the more senior partners. And he said I liked everybody, got along with everybody except this one other guy, this one other partner. I didn't get along with him. He didn't get along with me, and I didn't care. And he said, so one day we were doing this big offsite, all the partners with the managing director, managing partner, doing some planning, strategic planning, or some kind of hotel, and then we broke for lunch. And in the lunch buffet line, the managing partner was standing next to my nemesis in line, and just turned to him while they're getting chicken and said, "Hey, what do you think about?" and mentions my friend. And the nemesis turned to him and told him exactly what he thought about him. And then my friend said within about 3 weeks, his responsibilities got changed. And within about 6 months, he was exited from the firm. Yeah. So he said, you can't walk through life with that kind of attitude. You've got to find a way to even build some of those bridges, because you never know when someone's going to be standing next to somebody in line getting chicken and your name comes up.
Right. It's poison, right? And usually until we're asked, we're carrying that inside of ourselves, only poisoning ourselves. And then once we release it in a non-useful way, it then poisons other people in their experiences.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where that whole idea of like slander and mindful conversation and mindful talk about and a lot of different traditions and spiritual traditions have different, cultures and rules around that and customs and philosophies around that. Which is probably where our law system around slander and those type of speech in the legal precedents have gotten created. But I think whatever we're carrying inside of us, the longer we're carrying it, the longer it's marinating and the longer it's fermenting. And eventually we will become a pressure cooker and will show up. And if it's not going to be dealt with that person, it's going to show up in some other relationship that resembles or hints some type of attributes around that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Everybody's a metaphor. So everybody's a metaphor about something to somebody else.
You're